Welcome back to Understanding VC. I'm your host Rahul. Today, my guest is Vinod Shankar. Vinod is a co founder and partner at Java Capital, an early stage VC fund in India that focuses on investing in startups across various sectors, including fintech, health tech, SaaS, consumer, and deep tech. Prior to Java, Vinod managed a seed portfolio at Kalaari Capital and has also been an active angel investor supporting more than 20 startups. Now, let's talk to him. Hi, Vinod. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, thanks, Rahul. Pleasure. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, so I came across one of your tweets. 99% of India's top 1% think that they are middle class in India, or upper middle class, or upper middle class, not really rich. That is so true. So, yeah, just wanted to know, are you also from a middle class background? I'd love to know more about where you grew up, your family background, and also your interest growing up.
Yeah, so let me do the growing up part and then tackle this middle class obsession. I grew up in Bangalore, born in Bangalore, I think in the old part of Bangalore, where there was no notion of any differentiation that I could really remember of, right? I used to walk into households in the neighborhood, get kids along, go to the ground, and assemble a cricket team and go, right, and play in the ground. So there was a lot of freedom I felt when I was in those growing up years in the neighborhood. I think today's kids don't have that. I think it's a quintessential 90s kid statement. In a way, I played a lot of cricket in and around the gullies there. And I walked into nearby slums. I only got to know the slums later. I just used to just navigate through, like running around. Didn't realize what it meant. Only in the later years you realize what is what, right? Because you're just playing. That's what I did. So it gave me a sense of a lot of different things in a very small neighborhood, where that I grew up in near, Nandizurga Road. That was my neighborhood. And largely, was driven by playing cricket and playing games on the road and the ground. That's how I grew up. The only other influences that I can recall was of my granny being extremely frugal with how she was pretty much the matriarch and running the whole family in some form and controlling. And I think I learned very, very intrinsically from her certain values, kind of remember during Diwali, she used to tell, connect those sparkles leftover copper, right? And she used to ask, bring it back after you burn the sparkles. I mean, I didn't understand the logic. Somebody burnt it, but copper, she said it's extremely valuable. So those left an impression about, technically speaking, right? I wouldn't call ourselves middle class even then in Bangalore. I think we were decently well off. We had our own houses, and my grandfather had built a decent fortune, I would say. But our living was middle class, Rahul. That is the
Yeah,
conundrum, right?
yeah,
I think there was access to resources, but as I said, right, my grandmother was extremely frugal. So she controlled the resources, and we always felt we are frugal because we used to buy from pretty much a fair price shop, go to the kerosene shop and stand in the queue. So I think resources might have been there, is my view. But as I've grown up, right, I tend to think, but we were not allowed to use the resources and show it off in some sense. We were
yeah.
brought up like a typical middle class Bangalore kid. Access to a masala dosa was once a year or twice a year or thrice a year at the max. And access to an ice cream was even rare only after you passed out an exam. My father used to buy an ice cream. So you get a sense, right? I think it
Yeah.
is middle class value systems at the end of the day. I may not have technically been comparing this 1% argument, right? I think we would have fit into that. I think we were made to believe that we are middle class and the value system is middle class eventually to start with. Yeah.
Also, I've heard you talk about that you have high risk appetite in the sense you jump into things. You've done that throughout your career. So I just wanted to get your opinion on this. So if you're a VC having so this is a character, right? So I also have a similar character. Is that an advantage or a disadvantage in your opinion?
Well, I think VC is a risk business. It's a high risk business, right?
High risk reward.
High risk reward business. So I think appetite for risk is really useful. I think I identified early in my life that I'm willing to take such risks. I'm willing to let go of capital sometimes. I think that realization and the fear of losing capital, right, goes away. Once it goes away, right, then you can take a slightly different kind of risks, right? So when I started making, initially angel investments, Rahul, I asked my wife, this is what I'm going to do with our savings. So instead of buying a new house or constructing the existing house. So she was actually very supportive. And I said, this is what we will do for the next 4 or 5 years. Instead of investing in a house that most people typically do after you get your first two jobs, right? Typically, that's what happens. I think that was an indication of risk appetite. And I'd also done another crazy thing that I think that probably is the most crazier thing to do in any point in life. Right? I'd quit my first job, and I had got married, and I'd switched careers, and I also had started two outlets of Just Books as a small SME entrepreneur, first to learn as an entrepreneur, right? Imagine I'm becoming an entrepreneur, an SME entrepreneur. I'm getting married and I'm switching careers from technology to marketing and business development. And all this happened in a span of like 4 months. So some folks ask me, what is this? You're trying to do all this together, right? Switching careers, building some entrepreneurial stuff, and also getting married.
Yeah.
When I look back on it, I realize it's just like a massive risk that I had taken, right?
Yeah.
Any of this could have fallen through. Luckily for me, right, all of them worked out well. And today, where I stand is solidly because of all of them really worked out very well. My outlets did well, and I joined Just Book switching careers, and I that's when switched from technology, writing code, to business development and marketing. Which I think is an essential skill to also it helps me today tremendously when I look back. Technology, marketing, business development, and then eventually angel investing. Right, what led me to for a full time career in venture eventually. So it's a unique lens. I feel I have a unique lens of tech, business development and marketing, and then doing angel investing, then eventually doing venture. I Sometimes it happens. You get a little bit of blessings from somewhere. You just need to take the risk. But that was an indication of risk for me. Frankly, and the appetite has been there since, and I think it's continued. And I think risk appetite is important. Otherwise, you'll be fearful of making a decision. Frankly, Ram, in this state, you have to make decisions. You'll have to be optimistic still and know that some of the decisions will go wrong. And that's the ability to take risk. I think it's needed in this industry. Otherwise, it's hard to do this day in and day out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've also heard you talk about Black Swan, the book. So, I mean, I'd love to know the connection between the venture business and the Black Swan events. And yeah,
Yeah, I think interesting again serendipity, right? So when I was first job, my skip level boss, Rajesh Shrivata, he set up OJS Ventures. After the company got acquired, he moved on and set up this venture. That's piqued my curiosity to no extent, and I was keen to understand what the whole this venture business is all about. And coincidentally, right, I was reading this book called Black Swan, and in Black Swan, right, in one of the sections, right, he talks about controllable black swans. And he very clearly, the author mentions, venture capital is one of the few places where you can find controllable black swans. Some people call that the blue swans today, the controllable one, but it is potentially possible to anticipate and see a potential black swan, and then you make a investment and you potentially can make a killing out of it. I think the coincidence of my skip level boss starting a venture capital firm and Talib's book talking about Black Swan, talking about controllable Black Swans, and venture capital being one of the fewer industries where you could actually do that. I think that's the moment of truth for me, or the light bulb moment. To why should you not do venture capital at some point in your life?
yeah.
This was
So,
2008 9.
yeah. So, what's the controllable Black Swan?
See, to the COVID, right? It's a
Yeah.
Black Swan which is not controllable.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know what is happening when it is happening.
Yeah.
But imagine if let's take a Uber example, right? You knew GPS is coming, you knew smartphones are coming, you knew data is getting cheaper. If you had factored in all this and thought about it deeply, right, you could have built an Uber, right? So you knew something is happening. It's not like a black swan, it happens unanticipated, right? It's a trend. You can see something happening, you anticipate, what might happen. That is the nature of that beast, right? So a GPS, a smartphone, and data. That is the cause for Uber. You could potentially anticipate. So today there is generative AI. Can you see ahead what might happen, right?
Yeah.
I think when things change, sometimes it changes dramatically. That's a black swan. You don't know, you can't predict. It happens very quickly. I think in a controllable case, right, you can see it. You just have to be more insightful, more non-obvious stuff to keep an eye out for what's happening and observe those patterns. Then you will find trends happening, and then you get into something like a blue swan. And those blue swans are the ones who become really massive companies eventually, right? And VC works on this model that's clearly right. You invest in 15 companies, one or two
Yeah.
companies become winner, right? And then
Outsized
one
returns.
outside, yeah, exactly. So that outside returns happens only because you spotted a trend early, and the trend is potential controllable black swan for you because maybe others have not seen it. You've seen it. So you take a bet on those. And when I say controllable, because you can predict a few things about it, it doesn't happen suddenly. You can make a pattern out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's what Axel calls the prepared mind, right? So you kind of,
Kind of. Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
And also, another great example would be again Bill Gurley studying the marketplace model and then looking out for some company like Uber.
Exactly. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes it lands on you. The swan
Yeah,
lands on you.
yeah,
Sometimes you go in search of it. Yeah. Most cases, searching is a very methodical, true process oriented approach. If something lands on you, but keep an eye out always, a prepared mind, right? It sometimes it crosses you. You may not see it. It's not obvious. It's
yeah,
happened many times. That's why I have a very strong believer in serendipity also, Rahul.
yeah,
Chance meetings, chance encounters, something crossing the path, right, will lead to something totally nuanced, totally different. Like, even if you ask me, right, for example, when I just books, right, that's the second job that I did. I'd gone to a startup event by Head Start Events. This was in 2009 or something. And it was very early days. It was happening in IIM Bangalore in a small room. And professor of NSRCL, Suresh Bhagatula, he was generally talking about entrepreneurship and things. And then he passing mentioned that, look, we've incubated this company called Just Books and it's interesting. And me and my friend were sitting together. We were like, what, 28 or something like that, maybe age. He said, oh, this is pretty interesting. And I just go back the next day and write to the founder of Just Books saying, I want to meet you. And he doesn't give a meeting. I just say, I want to meet you once more. And I pass
yeah,
by your setup every day. I want to meet you. Eventually, he relents and gives me a meeting. That was like absolute serendipity, right? Going to this
yeah,
event where I am meeting this founder, and I end up spending 5 years at Just Books, my career, right? So, and it has happened so many times. So I've kept it always open, and that's also the reason to keep ourselves open to more people. Anytime somebody wants to talk to us, right, we want to keep ourselves very, very open about it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. You also spent time at Kalari. I've heard you mention that you got a lot of exposure to a lot of startups, and that's exactly what you wanted at that point. So, what did that do to you? Exposure to a lot of startups.
So imagine this, right? I was doing angel investing on the side, and somebody offers you money to do the same thing. It's like I was buying ice creams, and somebody just opened up the ice cream shop for me for free, and I was getting paid to be in the ice cream shop, right, and also
Yeah,
eat the ice cream in some sense. So that was the candy shop feeling that I had, right? I was like super excited when I got the opportunity to work at Kalari. So if I was meeting five startups in a month, now I was meeting five startups in a day. That is a massive amount of compounding of knowledge. Like, I think that makes a huge difference to how I think and how I learn about sourcing, about managing companies, working with founders, relationships. A whole hog, if you ask me, right? I learned in those 4 years that I was there. And also, I
yeah,
had this fortunate opportunity to manage and work and invest in a lot of those companies there that gave me the exposure that I needed, to independently step out, right? And set up Java Capital in 2020. Yeah. Massive gratitude to Kalaari. Also, I would acknowledge that very few funds would have given me the opportunity also, because in 2016, I did write to all the funds in the country who were present and live at that point. I heard only from a few people, Rahul, honest answer. Very few people responded of that. I think Kalari was an opportunity that was really ended up opening up for me. And I think when I think back, right, it is the only fund probably would have fit in also, right? They encouraged the diversity and kind of people that were nice, talented people, well rounded, but they were not from XYZ place or something like that. It was people from all over the country and different folks, right? I think that is the only way I could have fit in, I felt, or maybe for them to have me also in the first place. It was
yeah,
the fund's diversity in a way that helped me to get in, I feel. Otherwise, it would have been harder to get into a fund. If you ask
Yeah.
me, given where I come from, it would have been harder.
Yeah. And you mentioned about fitting in well at Kalari. Then why go and start another fund? Just continue to try to become a partner at Kalari, right?
No,
Yeah.
absolutely great question, right? See, I think there are certain incentives that you get as a partner, one.
Yeah.
And also there is certain impact you can create, Rahul. I think that was critical for me. For the second portion of that, right? Incentives, yes, that do drive people, right? Like how much you can make eventually, creation of wealth, compounding that happens. And talking about Black Swan and Talib, right? I also had realized non-linearity very early in life. So anything that is linear, right? I wouldn't hate it, but I wouldn't want to be there for long, any linearity, right? I did a startup. I worked for two startups simply because there are non-linear possibilities that exist.
Yeah.
Be it knowledge, be it wealth, non-linearity is something that I've been looking for. So I wanted impact and non-linearity in both the cases. And also eventually financial outcome also something that I was looking forward to. I think that was a point I had to step up because see, in a large fund, right, you can persuade, you can use rhetoric, but you can never make a decision till you become a partner.
Partner. Yeah.
So that means I have to wait for a long time to make those impacts. I was in a hurry, honestly, to make
Yeah.
my impact. And I was in a hurry both to make impact and get to the non-linearity quickly back onto the track. If you see my career, right, it has been non-linear curves. I would lose opportunity costs, but learning will be non-linear. In some places, wealth, money will be non-linear. In
Yeah.
Kalari's case, knowledge is non-linearity. And I think I'm hoping Java knowledge will compound, wealth also would potentially compound and get some non-linearity there. So
Yeah.
non-linearity is a chase, and that is a gap. Somewhere you get knowledge, non-linearity. Somewhere you get wealth, non-linearity. You choose. So in different points in career, you could choose and switch, and hopefully you'll make it in the end both non-linear. Impact is the reason I had to eventually make my own case for a fund. And I think I am enjoying this, right? I think I am able to have this peace of mind saying, look, you are living by the sword or you are going to die by this sword. So it is upon me for the decisions that I make and my partners that we make, right?
Yeah.
That the larger ecosystem holds us responsible and including our LP that will hold us accountable
Yeah.
and also the startup founders, right? So I think there's more responsibility, more accountability, and more impact that I feel I can create. And I think age is not on everybody's side for a long time. So I felt, it was the right time for me to move and do this. And that's why we are here. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very honest answer. And yeah, I mean, this is a business of finance and making money is important. And also the non-linearity side of things. I think that, so I have had this realization only very recently that you can only become super wealthy if you take non-linear bets. And the idea
True.
is to take as many non-linear bets as possible in
True.
life.
True.
Because sometimes if you there are these common narratives which talks about hard work and grit and perseverance and all that you can do. I mean, a lot of people work harder than a lot of these wealthier people.
See,
It's not about that, right?
see, I think it's a very interesting view, right? I think I learned very quickly that you can't be an employee and become wealthy. See, wealthy in a sense, I think it's boiled in the impact to me only again. What will I do with the wealth, right? I think you will want to give back. There's only X amount that you need for yourself. And after that, it's going to go back to the society in some way. That's how I've always thought about wealth. You need some X number threshold. And after that, it's going to go back to society. I think non-linearity is like clearly, if people understand it, right, then they will take risks. I mean, why would I want to invest in a startup in 2013? Or for that matter, right, when I got my first salary in 2006, Rahul, I opened a stockbroking account with one of the premier brokers at that time. And I started day one investing in both mutual funds and stockbroking with my first month's salary. Where that came from, frankly, right? I have always been spiked by curiosity when Maruti listed in 2004, right, at 115 rupees. I was like, who determined this 115 rupees and why is it going up or down?
Yeah.
I mean, what really is happening? And this was the impact to me when I was growing up, saying, what are these things that's happening, right? Why is such a thing happening? And this was curiosity, frankly speaking. And there was a media explosion also in that 96 to roughly around, early media explosion. And that was feeding me so much. And I was always curious watching, say, TV, reading newspapers. This curiosity is what made me ask these questions, made me open a stockbroking account. I hold it even now, almost 2 decades now. Did I make money or not is a different question, but it just taught me about annual statements. It used to be in physical copies then. It used to come
Yeah.
home. So I used to take leisure and start reading these annual reports. And Reliance used to send, for example, coupons for Vimal with that. So somehow a different era, right? But it was always there, I think, inherently for me to do this. But look at the flip side also, like my grandfather, my grandmother, or my dad, right? All of them work linearly.
Yeah.
But the difference is they were very frugal, Rahul.
Yeah.
We are not frugal, or at least I am not as frugal as them. So they were making 10 rupees means they were saving 8 rupees. I think all of us today, this generation, right, who call ourselves middle class just because we've come from the same value system, if we make 10 rupees, I think we will spend 8 rupees and then only save 2. Look, that's the big difference. And if they work hard, 8 rupees saving, right, compound again. Then non-linearity then was compounding of savings. And today's non-linearity is about, we're taking risks and making some non-linear bets in some sense, right? You take a bet on certain things, but compounding for them was saving and buying another new thing, saving more cash, buying another house. That was also non-linearity, right? Compounding is non-linear in some sense. Yeah. So that is how I think the large generation did it. That is why I think our generation is stuck. You are at one side you talk about frugality, middle class, when we are not. Then the time, other side, you're not going to take risks because you are always invested in gold and real estate, but you can't do that level of compounding because you're not as frugal as that last generation was. So you either jump to this generation and take risks and take bets, or you say, look, I'm going to be as frugal as the last generation and take bets only on some real estate and traditional asset classes. I think that's a massive conundrum that everybody is in. I've bounced to this side. I'm very clearly bounced on to taking these nonlinear asymmetric bets. Clearly, I am not frugal. I can tell you that. I'm not frugal. I spend. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I realized that I need to set up a life where I can continue to take non-linear bets all my life. And then I saw your tweet from yesterday talk about Alchemist and the factor of luck and coincidence. And I've read a research paper on luck. Luck is just a function of the number of tries. So if you show up, continue to show up, at some point you're going to hit luck.
Yeah. I think the follow-on tweet to that, right, was an alchemist tweet, right? Somebody asked, I think Rajesh asked,
Rajesh, yeah.
what's the strategy, right?
Yeah.
I said the strategy is simple: discipline, consistency, just show up. And I also said Dravid, right, is a classic case of that, right? Discipline, consistency, show up. Half the time, people don't show up, Rahul, this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Showing up is so critical. First, show up, and then, possibilities are endless if you show
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
So that's why I coined this term. I liked it a lot. It's saying, Indranagar ka gunda is my funda in life.
Yeah.
So whatever the Dravid's approach is really what really helps. And you need patience. Again,
Yeah.
you need patience. The discipline consistently and show up. I think it will work. You don't need to be a Virendra Sehwag. You don't need to be like super flamboyant. If you remain consistent, it's work. And it's worked for me all this years, right? It's worked for me. I think I will just stick to it. It feels good to keep doing the same thing again and again and again. You just need to prepare your mind to say that, you need to keep doing it. Something will happen. And that is luck, as you said. And coincidence or serendipity, right, is a function of that, right? If you show up only, it's going to be coincidental, right? If you don't show up, how can it coincide with anything? It will not coincide. So it kind of goes with luck and coincidence, serendipity, right? Strong believer. All this exists. It's just that you need to show up. You can't be say, oh, luck is not coming to me. I mean, luck doesn't come to you. You keep going somewhere, luck will come to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I'd love to know a little bit more about Java Capital and specifically the core metrics that you look at internally as a fund to measure your performance, the way you operate.
I think core metrics. Let me talk about the value systems first, in some sense, right? So
Yeah.
one of the we've written down the value systems very clearly. One of the core value systems is an authentic to who you are. Don't change because we need to change for anything. Sometimes it might be uncomfortable, but at least that just sets the bar rolling on who we are clearly, right? And serendipity is a value in our system. Belief in fear of serendipity. Be open, meet people, don't closet yourself, and long term work with long term people and long term thinking. That's another core belief system that we have. And the last one, which internally aligns ourselves as a compass, is being intellectually honest to ourselves and to the team and to all our stakeholders also, right? When I say intellectually honest, Rahul, in a VC fund, right, we are making decisions on investing. That is the most critical decision in some sense, right? Or
Yeah.
like to recruit a hire. Between the partnerships and team, right, we want to say exactly what we believe in. It is about your belief at that particular point in time, but we want to make sure that you say exactly what you believe is the truth. I think that creates conversations and that creates counter viewpoints. And it also creates a healthy discussion to arrive at making a right decision in most cases. So between us, we say intellectual honesty is one of the key things when we make discussions or any decisions in the system. These are some of our key value systems within Java that we align ourselves both to our investors, to our founders, and within the team. We want to kind of align to these. We can add over time, but I think these five have kind of is what we started with as a firm. Open, transparent is another one. Being open and transparent in all what we do. And that's the internal compass, I would say, on value systems that we've kind of slowly built up. On metrics, if you ask me on like metrics and how we perform, right? Pre to this current fund, Rahul, we are tracking at close to 3.5x for the first 23 investments that we made. So that way, I think we're doing fairly okay, or like better than okay
Yeah.
is my view, or 3.5x. I think the metrics are is what is going to speak, over the years. I think that is something that we will keep an eye out, especially on how much of multiples and how much of IRR can we deliver consistently. I think it is about consistency again. There could be spikes, but consistently, if you can deliver the targeted returns, right? I think we'll be pretty happy, especially on that. I'm hoping that's what you wanted to know. I've given you internal compass, but
Yeah.
yeah, let me know if you want
So
to.
I mean the multiples and the IRR, yeah, that's a given, right? Besides
Hmm.
that, you've talked about the values. So is there a measure to measure those values in terms of like,
I, yeah, you can measure some of these. For example, how are you meeting entrepreneurs or how are you sourcing companies, right? If you are not at different places, right, you're not going to meet more people if you're not
yeah,
present here. So that is a sense of serendipity that we can measure. And the depth of discussions that we end up having and how many companies we invest to every company that we look, right, is also a measure of quality. For example, we do that, right? Like
yeah,
our selection ratio is roughly 0.75%. That means for every 120 companies, 125 companies, we invest in one company.
yeah,
And the other thing that we also keep an eye out is missed deal. What we typically do is we keep an eye out on all the series A plus companies. And when a series A happens, we go back and check our pipeline. Did this ever come to us?
yeah.
So that keeps a check on saying, are we seeing what the world is seeing? An internal quality check. So,
And if you had, if you find such a startup, and then if you had passed, then what do you do?
so yes, it has happened.
Yeah,
Okay, it has happened
yeah,
many times. There are two kinds of errors we have internally for this, right? Like one is called errors of omission. That means we didn't see the deal at all, right? That is a sourcing problem and building a brand and being very visible if it's in your sector. Two is error of commission. That means it came to you, it was in your radar, you had spoken to the company, and then you decided to pass on. The next level of analysis is why did you pass on? Because the notes have comments, notes, everything is captured in a tool. You go and check what were the reasons at that point in time that you passed it. Was it valid today now? What changed and what made the company relevant? Was the decision right at that time? See, decisions are made in a context and in a point in time, right?
yeah,
So macros change, right? Then you can't blame yourself for a macro change. For example, suddenly tomorrow morning when another wave of COVID hits, right? Some company you invested just got affected, then you can't blame yourself for that.
Yeah.
But can you go back and see, is there any other error that you did or something that was an oversight that you missed? I think that's the learning so that
Yeah.
you don't commit it the next time, especially errors of commission. We've had that many times. Companies have gone on to Series B also, and we felt comfortable that we passed it at that time because we were not comfortable in that particular context in time. It happened. Maybe that misses are part of this game round. We
Yeah.
will, but the critical thing is, can we capture enough of the winners than the misses? If
Yeah.
we able to do that consistently, right? I think as a fund, outcome looks pretty good, even if you
Yeah.
miss out on some large ones. But if you are able to capture another large one, then you are able to kind of make it through in a way. It's okay to
Yeah.
miss
So
hazard, occupational hazard. It's okay to miss, but go back and see why have you missed.
yeah. So the larger problem then is that if a startup don't show up in your radar, that's the bigger problem to solve, right?
That's a bigger problem to solve. That is the error of omission, as I called you. That is like an inbound problem or your positioning problem, your brand problem. Why are you not seeing what the world is seeing, right? That is the question to keep asking all the time. And why is a founder choosing you or somebody else over you? I think that's a question of track record, long term nature, and ability to put yourself out there to say, look, I am capable of supporting you as an investor. Why you should work with us? I think that's the other part of the story, which is pretty much like a marketing problem, if you ask me around. It also comes from track record, right? If you've invested in successful companies, it becomes a virtuous cycle. People think, okay, this company knows how to invest in successful companies. Then your next set of investors look at, oh, okay, Java is investing in good companies, so I should go after it. And founders also think, oh, Java is investing in successful companies, so if we take capital from them, maybe we'll also become successful. That is the virtuous cycle you really want to get into eventually. That is what all of us are sitting and grinding to build over a period of time. And that takes time. That takes time. Maybe we are here, maybe we are at 3, 4, 5. How do you get to 8? Right? That's something everyday work that's being done. Yeah, including what you do on Twitter.
Yeah. And that's probably the reason why we're doing the podcast as well, right?
Absolutely correct. Correct. To
Yeah.
say who we are, to say who we are, and who do we want to talk to? Yeah.
Yeah. So you talk about in terms of support for the portfolio companies about helping them specifically with two things. One is hiring and also the follow-on fundraising. So, and I've heard you talk about also the percentage of people who you're able to do with this, either hiring or fundraising. So what is that percentage? And then what is the percentage that you're not able to help and why is that?
Okay. I current percentage I'll have to go back and check, but I might have put it out somewhere. But I overall I only think three things, really the VCs can help with, if you ask me, right? One is help them raise an external capital by making the right set of connects in the ecosystem, help them hire the right set of people. Three is help them with business development, help
Business
making the right
development.
clientele connects. All of these are function of resources, if you ask
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
We've been able to do well on connecting people to next round of investors because we've been in the ecosystem for a longer time. We are able to do that well. Hiring, I would say, patchy. We can improve on it, but again, it's a function of resource. You need to have more resources to help on hiring, if you ask me. But that's something like a lot of value can actually be added to founders, especially early stage that we operate in. And client connects also is a function of networks, which we've been able to do to a good extent, I would say. And also, right, founders, right? Some founders proactively ask you for help, and some founders are like okay with, they say, "Look, I'll figure this out." So our interaction and level of involvement is actually dependent on the founder's context. We don't want to force ourselves saying, "I want to help you and I want to do this for you." Right? No, we don't do that. So we assess it, how much do they need, how much do they want us to be involved, and accordingly we get involved in helping them and trying to act as a soundboard at times, and hearing their thoughts out. Sometimes actually that's all you might have to do. Sometimes just a late night call and hear them out. That's enough, I think. Some people just
Yeah.
need that another shoulder to just put it out there and then move on in a way. So different founders, different contexts need to assess, and nobody fits the same peg. So we accordingly work on these. But these are the three areas that I would think always to add value. Two, we've been fairly good at it. The hiring part, we need more resources at our end to kind of that for our company.
Okay. And I've seen you spend a lot of time in Coimbatore and generally looking for founders across Tamil Nadu. Love to know why, and also, are there good founders from Tamil Nadu?
So I think Coimbatore is the beginning of the tier two strategy for us, right? That felt conducive to start with, familiar territory. Bhargavi is from Chennai. I'm from Bangalore, but I can speak that tongue also. So I can speak the local tongue and the other tongue also. So in a way that helped. And if you make, there's an interesting assessment. If you look at the top tier two cities which have massive amount of wealth, right? Surat comes first. Second comes Coimbatore.
Coimbatore.
So distance wise, right? Coimbatore is closer. Culture wise, language wise, we said let's pick this first city to make penetration into a tier two city. Again, right? Very few people want to go and spend time there around in a tier two city. I'm going where others don't want to go. But generally, you go where others don't want to go, you find some gems.
That's exactly what we talked about earlier, also about the asymmetric bets.
Exactly. So and I've spent now almost a year and a half every month, 2 to 3 days in Coimbatore. Most months, except there would be 1 or 2 months. Otherwise, I've spent like 2 3 days there. I started liking the city so much and the entrepreneurial culture there, unbelievable. It is not a new age entrepreneurial city, right? But it has been always an entrepreneurial city before any other city, right?
Yeah.
It's a traditional entrepreneur who's made the city grow. And so I great liking to the city, and we've invested in a company. We'll announce shortly in Coimbatore, and I'm like actively evaluating companies from Coimbatore. My next stop could be Surat. Again, it's about capacity building internally for us, right? So Coimbatore, maybe we'll pick 2 3 cities every year. We'll try and talk to more people, do some more activities, events, and a lot of people have been asking me, how did you do this Coimbatore thing now? Why did you do it? It's an interesting experiment, right? Because entrepreneurship is going to come from these smaller cities, and by no stretch a smaller city, by the way. It's a massive city. And there are like quality colleges, and there is a thriving energy and excitement. I'm excited to do this. I will find my rough diamonds, if you wish, in places where nobody else is looking. And now maybe I've told it on the podcast, maybe people also will start go looking. Just joking. But I think more people are welcome. I've taken some VCs to Coimbatore also to kind of get the sense of the ecosystem. We will continue doing this, Rahul. I think there is a lot of entrepreneurs in these cities, and we will go where they are. They don't need to come to us in Bangalore. We will go and find some of these. Yeah.
Yeah. When you think about the future, right, what excites you the most?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think when I think about the future of late, I think see the startup excitement has been in my head for nearly like now for like 2 decades or like 1.5 decades for sure, right? I worked in a startup to start with in Indranagar in 2006 I think that excitement has not gone away, Rahul, frankly, right? So every career move that I made was like trying to get myself into the heart of it. And now I am in the peak of that action, right? And as I look back 1.5 decades, right, this is still like day zero here, right? I think I have another decade plus to go, and the excitement is the future is this is the most exciting thing, right? In a way, what 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 else can create more impact on the lives of all of us, right? Uber is convenience, right? Like look at generative AI, what it's doing. But the other excitement also in the last 1 year has been about the climate story. If you ask me honestly, right, that's been more rationalized in a way. People are taking it much more seriously. I think people are appreciating things that we should do. I think is an interesting aspect. I think the next 2 decades, 3 decades, action on climate, right, will be like the future, if you ask me. Generative AI is fine, but it's going to help us solve problems, right? It's not like it's a tool again. Whatever LLMs that we have or tools, can it
Yeah.
help solve the climate change problem for us? I think that will be an exciting journey that I would look forward for the next 2, 3 decades, right? Till we solve it and get things under control. I don't know how we'll solve it because we all are assuming, we only can solve it by bringing the temperature under check. Maybe there is some other radical solution. I don't know. I'm just saying here, right? I'm just saying that
Yeah.
there could be some radical solutions that people would kind of come about. I think the future, especially on climate, is the most exciting space for me, if you ask me. And it is a hardware, Rahul. Again, climate doesn't come in just software. It's about executing on the ground things there, hardware. You need to do atoms, not just bits,
Yeah.
right? So I think, and having done hardware, like invested in hardware companies, physical things, right? I think it will be the most exciting thing doing hardware, deep tech companies, especially on climate and other areas, right? I think that'll be the most exciting thing for the next 2 decades, if you ask me.
Yeah. What about the future of Bangalore?
Oh man, you're touching on a topic.
I know.
Yes, I look, right, for a quintessential Bangalore person like me, right? When I look at Twitter, right, I sometimes get quite agitated. There's a constant barrage of this is not good, that is not good. Almost everything is nearly negative, maybe, and also the platform is like that way, right? And it gets me sometimes riled up to no end. But look at it, right? The city was not built for this population for a 1.6 crore infrastructure. It was never built for this, right?
Yeah.
And I think the previous chief minister aptly put it right in one of the sessions, right? He said, if you sit in Indiranagar, Koramangala, and HSR and nowhere else in Bangalore and you say the infrastructure is bad, it's going to be bad. I mean, that's one way of just telling. That's what he said.
Yeah.
So I think, look, the infrastructure has to be improved. There is no doubt. But I would never give up on the city and say, I think it will, I mean, and also, right, it's easier to put it on Twitter. I have actually, for many years, worked as a volunteer for some orgs between 2000, say between 8 to 11 or 12. I did work for some of these orgs. I've seen what really goes at the back end. It's not an easy thing. Our civic engagement is very low, Ram. That's the honest answer, right?
Yeah.
Everybody is compounding wealth and compounding knowledge. So, nobody is. So, like the earlier part of the conversation, they are so focused on compounding wealth and compounding our own knowledge. How much time do we give to our own cities, right? Is very, very limited.
Yeah.
So, I'm not expecting everybody has to dedicate something, but think about it, right? What can you do? Where can you engage, right? I think that's a very limited conversation, civic, social conversation that we end up having. And I think Bangalore was suffering an unnatural growth curve, which will have to build capacity for that, which is the only way for it to survive, which I think will happen, or we will have newer cities built around it, and dispersion has to happen. Uh, and I think just making a large comment on the city, right? I've been here, right? I think wherever I go around, after a couple of maybe 4 or 5 days, I just feel the need to come back. Usually, I think maybe everybody feels for their own cities. That's generally how I also feel when I landed. When I take the cab and the breeze hits you, right? I just feel like I'm home. So you can't take that away in a way, whatever it is. So it's a nostalgia in some sense for me. So
Yeah.
I think I will live whatever happens to the city in a way within the city. Yeah.
When you land and when that breeze hits you, that
Yeah.
is a very special feeling for anybody. It doesn't matter whether you're
Yeah.
from Bangalore or not. You instantly like the place thanks to the
Yeah.
climate.
Yeah, and thanks for the climate. And I think that it is like you just feel very, very secure, comfortable. I felt it many times when the cab just takes off from T1 and starts hitting the road, right? I just feel, okay, you are home. So that's a feeling which never goes away every time I come back. So I think that's the feeling of nostalgia for your city, and you spent your time knowing the culture of the city and the people of the city, right? It's always been a giving city. I think nobody can ever take that credit away from the city. I think it's always given people, and I don't think so. A lot of people rightfully claim we came and created the city. You came because it gave you in the first place, right? I think that's the correction that I tend to tell them. You, the city attracted you. You came, then you give back to the city. It's not you give and then it became a city, right? No, I think that's a small graciousness, gratitude. I think we should all have. And every city is like has its own fan following. So it's good when I'm like Bangalore guy in a way, that way.
This was great. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Hey, thanks, Rahul. I think I didn't expect us to actually talk so much about the city and happenings here, right? I think it's a refreshing conversation. Thank you, man. That was like some, pulling back from some of my old memories and some deep hidden sets, I wanted to put out, and it's contextually relevant today also. Appreciate it, man. I'm hopeful that people would hear and understand of what we do and more about what the city also means to a lot of people and also what Java does, happy to. And as I said, we are always open to people and our channels are always open, for people to write to us, founders to write to us, whichever sphere they may be from, whichever college they may be, they will hear back from us an answer either way.